Hello, student. Today I'm going to give you a short lecture on how to write your exegetical paper. As you know, I have given you instructions on this already. The primary instruction is the exegetical paper instructions on the blackboard. Then I have provided two secondary resources on this. First one is presenting an argument written by John Frame. This will give you basically how you're going to argue your case. In your critical exegetical paper, you are going to identify a critical issue or two. Then you're going to argue your position with this particular issue. Then you're going to defend that your position or your thesis in your paper. Okay, so he has written this is very clearly and how you're going to argue. Then another resource is guidelines for papers in general. This will give you what is the research paper, then how you're going to write the paper. And be sure to read all these instructions carefully. Let me go through this exegetical paper instructions one by one. For this assignment, I expect that you will write a critical analysis of the passage you choose. So here the first step is you have to choose your passage. I have provided the list of the passages from which you can choose from. Here, for example, I'm going to choose the Romans chapter 7, verses 7 through 25 for my exegetical paper. And in the introduction, what you're going to do here, the first section is introduction. In the introduction, you need to first identify the critical issues involved in interpreting the chosen passage and provide your own answers to the issues in your thesis statement and explain your plan on how you are going to prove the thesis. Let me explain what I meant with this. First step here in the introduction, you're going to identify critical issues. Usually these critical issues are already identified in critical commentaries or the journals. Schreiner, who is one of the very important scholars for the Romans, here he has written a commentary on Romans. He identified several issues actually with this particular passage. The first one is here Paul uses nomos in the passage very frequently, and nomos usually translated into English, the law. What does he mean by the law here? And scholars have differing interpretations. Here Schreiner is talking about on page 346, the issue of the law comes to the forefront in this chapter, especially the relationship between the law and sin. The word nomos here does not refer to law in general as said by Sanday and Hadlam, or to Roman law, and this position was argued by Caseman in 1980, but to the law of Moses. And this is the view of most of recent commentators, including Calvin and Wilkins and Fitzmyer and even Schreiner. Okay, so here, what does Paul mean by nomos? This is one of the issue, and here Schreiner already gave you three different positions. Then he explained each position. Then he critiqued them and weighing each position's strengths and weaknesses. Then he also said whether he agrees with it or not. Then he said why. Then another issue which is more important, on page 359, and Schreiner is going to talk about this particular issue of the identity of I in the passage. Let me read it. The identity of the I, ego, in verses 7 through 25 has generated intense controversy. Okay, why? Let me read chapter 7, verse 21 through 25 of the Romans. So I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within my members. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, I myself in my mind am a slave to God's law, but in the simple nature, a slave to the law of sin. And people have been asking if this Paul meant with this I just himself. As you know, Paul was the born-again Christian. He was the apostle. How could he say that, what a wretched man I am? Who will rescue me from this body of death? So, on this issue, scholars suggested many different opinions. And Schreiner gives you the list of these different opinions. Three main theories have been propounded, although variations and combinations of these views have all been suggested. First, the I refers to Adam's experience with God's commandment in the Garden of Eden. Second, it designates Israel's experience of receiving the law at Mount Sinai. Third one is, I is autobiographical, denoting the experience of the Apostle Paul. So, this is the issue I'm going to deal with here in this paper, just for example. Then, in the introduction, I identified the critical issue, which is the identity of I in the passage. Okay. Then, here I have to give my position on this particular issue. Okay, provide your own answers to the issues in your thesis statement. So thesis statement is what you argue in the paper. So usually it starts with, I argue here that, okay, the I in the passage refers to, for example, the first view refers to Adam's experience with God's commandment in the Garden of Eden. So I may say, I argue here that the I in the passage refers to the Adam in the Garden of Eden. Okay, that will be my thesis. Okay. Then, third part of introduction section is explain your plan on how you are going to prove the thesis. Okay, so here you identified the issue, then you gave your own position on the issue, then you have to explain how you're going to prove the thesis. Basically, on this plan, just to briefly summarize what you are going to say in your body of the paper. Okay? Just explain that. Then second section is main body of the paper. Let me read it again. In the main body of the paper, you need to first list and interact with the differing scholarly views on the critical issues. I have seen many students who really don't understand what these scholarly views meant. Okay, It's very simple. Let me give you an example from Schreiner's article. Here, as I have already read, the three main theories have been propounded. Okay, then first one is the I refers to Adam's experience with God's commandment in the Garden of Eden. This is first view. And second view is it designates Israel's experience of receiving the law at the Mount Sinai. The third view is I's autobiographical, denoting the experience of the Apostle Paul. Okay, so you list these three views, then you want to interact with them. Okay, by interaction, I mean, first you have to explain what these views meant. Okay, who said this, then what they said about this particular view. Okay, so explain them. And actually Schreiner has done already here. So let me read what Schreiner said on this. A common view is that the reference is to Adam in the garden. Then he gave the citations about all the sources. Okay. Then Caseman says aptly, among these scholars, okay, he just picked one scholar. The major one is Caseman. There's nothing in the passage which does not fit Adam, and everything fits Adam alone. So this is the first view. Then he's going to critique this view and where they are coming from first. Okay, and Caseman, when he said this, there is rationale behind his argument. Okay, so you're going to explain each view and explain what is the rationale behind their argument. Okay, then you want to critique each position. What are the strengths and weaknesses of each position? Then you're going to tell whether you agree with it or not. Okay, but you don't just say, I don't agree because I don't like it. No. Okay, you have to explain why you do agree or you do not agree. Okay, and that's the main body. Okay, and you need to first list and interact with the different scholarly views. Okay, then when you are done with this interaction, then you're going to present your position again. Basically, this is what you said in your introduction in the thesis statement, but you're going to restate your thesis, okay? Otherwise, your readers going to be bored, okay? And then you have to provide with a series of supporting argument for it, and, which you will find from your reading of the resources. As I said in my introduction and instruction, I suggest that you should find at least 3 arguments that support your position. At least 3 arguments. Okay. Then in the main body, you are done now. Okay. You listed different scholarly views, you interacted with them, and you gave your own position, and you proved it with your supporting argument. Then third section is a conclusion. As I said here in the conclusion, you may wrap up your discussion on the issue. Again, in the paper, you tell the same thing 3 times. All right? You say what you want to say in the main body in your introduction. Okay? Then in your main body, you give all the detailed discussion about what you said in your introduction. Okay, then in the conclusion, you want to restate what you have said and what you have done in your paper. So you're going to tell the same story 3 times. That's your conclusion. Then if your paper, especially if your thesis is big enough, if you have already written on one particular issue, okay, with the 10 pages already gone. Okay, and you will write only 10 to 17 pages paper, not including your cover page and your table of content and your bibliography. If you've written more than 10 pages, then you may stop here. Okay, so introduction, main body, conclusion. You already have completed paper. But if you think it necessary to move further, especially the issue was not big enough to be covered in 10 pages, then you may want to go further. Okay? Then, based upon your thesis, you're going to interpret the whole passage. Okay? Then apply the lessons to your contemporary setting. That's the paper, and I hope it's been helpful for you to understand what I meant with these instructions. May God bless you richly when you write your final paper. Thank you, guys.